right, so rosemary is one of the only things at my house that grows year round, and I love it because it's kind of hearty and it just brings out the most in all meats, and I'm making one of my absolute faves. This is a crispy, beautiful pork chop with smoky chorizo white beans. This is gonna be incredible and in under 15 minutes. Here we go. Howard, you with me on this one?
I'm ready, let's do it.
All right, so I'm gonna get a couple of pans before I even open up the fridge on the heat. You guys know I like to preheat the whole kitchen, not just the oven, so the stove as well. So I'm gonna do one for my beans, one for my pork chops. And listen, I don't know if it's just me, but like pork always gets forgotten. Am I wrong on that? Like I feel like no one cooks pork anymore, and it's actually a really delicate, beautiful cut of meat to make, and it's so flavorful, and it's not that bad for you. I mean, I'd rather eat a piece of pork than red meat. So, you know, it's kind of like the other white meat, which I like. So I've got some pork chops bone in. I've got some kale I'm gonna play with, and then chorizo. Oh, I'm so excited about chorizo. So chorizo, if you guys don't know, is a Spanish sausage. It can be cured or uncured, meaning it's fresh and ground, but it always has smoked paprika in it. Howard, smell, it smells so good.
Yeah.
I love it. I've been to Spain, and man, it's just, there's just pork love everywhere. I mean, if you are a fan of pork fat, go to Spain. They know what they're doing. So I'm starting by slicing these kind of up into little rounds, and then I'm cutting the rounds into just little cubes. So just kind of cubing them up. And these are gonna get crispy, almost like bacon. I'm treating them like bacon. So I'm literally just kind of cutting them down, and then again. Beautiful. Perfect. So these are gonna go into a dry pan. You don't need to add any olive oil to the pan because there's enough fat inside the actual chorizo. And you can look, Howard, just take a look. Do you see in the pan, there's actually like oils coming out already? I mean, it literally is just starting, and it's already kind of secreting its fat, which is so nice. All right, so chorizo in, I'm gonna get some white beans. You guys know I'm a huge fan of all things canned, especially on weekday meals. It's just not something you should shy away from. It's okay to go into your pantry and reach for things instead of going and cooking white beans from scratch. It's just not sustainable. And so when it's a Tuesday night for me, I'm always reaching for a can of something. Chickpeas, white beans, whatevs. All right, so that's going down, even though usually I like to save the liquid. Not today. All right, so I got a can of white beans, I've got some kale. Let's talk about this pork. So do you need bone in? No, but it does help when it comes to pork chops, because pork chops can get pretty dry. Again, there's not a ton of fat on them. There's some decent fat, but it's nice to kind of have the insurance of the bone to keep it really, really moist. So I'm gonna add some salt over the top of these, enough to really crust it. You wanna see the salt. Howard, can you see the salt?
See it.
Good. And then I'm gonna grab some rosemary here, and I'm actually gonna just kind of zip it off. And then I just take these and I kind of slap them in and press. You can do this with chicken. You can do this with seafood of certain kinds that can kind of hold up to it. But I'm kind of pressing the herbs into the actual meat itself. I'm gonna do it again on this side. So flip them. And the goal is to keep the herbs in, and they kind of sear inside the flesh of the meat, really flavoring the meat from the inside. I have a recipe in my cookbook which is presses sage into some pork chops. And it's just a technique that I really love. It kind of sticks, and I just kind of leave them whole. These get nice and crispy. It's delicious. So let's just take a look. See, just like that. Awesome, right? Cool. All right, so I'm gonna grab a little bit of olive oil. Oh man, starting to burn over there. Watch this. Watch this move, one-handed. The second, so I know I'm starting to burn because you can see the fat has come out of the chorizo, but you see the smoke? Look at me, Howard. See how I'm looking like a 1940s film right now, just like this smoky haze? So that's when you want to stop the cooking with some white beans. Beautiful.
Oh, I can smell the chorizo.
Isn't that beautiful?
Really good.
And again, no olive oil. It's just gonna dull the flavor. So no olive oil in the beans, but yes, a little olive oil in the pan for our pork chops. So we're gonna take this rosemary, carefully lay it down. It's beautiful. That looks really good. All right, these rosemary stems, by the way, they still smell great. I'm just gonna throw them into the beans and I'll just fish them out later, but they're gonna flavor the beans just with them being them stemmy selves. This is kind of like a Spanish influenced dish. I love it. And you know, yeah, it's a very pork-centric dish. I grew up without any pork in the household. I grew up in a Jewish house and my dad we were kosher inside the house. We just didn't eat it. And I went to Italy for cooking school. I was starving. I remember I got off the plane starving. And I was 19 years old and I just went to like whatever, a little bar nearby, and of course I had some wine because I was excited that I was 19 and could have a glass of wine. And the guy was like, do you want a piece of prosciutto? I didn't even know what prosciutto was. I'm just like, yes, I'm in Italy for the first time. I want prosciutto. So he gave me this thin slice of prosciutto and I kind of remember taking it and being like, I have no idea what this is. I held it to the light and I'm like, what is this? And I kind of put it in my mouth and I think I saw God. My knees buckled. It was a very religious experience. And fast forward today and I've got pork chops on the skillet and chorizo in the white beans. So yeah, you could say I liked it. All right, so with kale, there's so many different ways to do this, but I'm just gonna leave the stems intact. I probably don't need all this. I'm only cooking for just the fam tonight. And I'm just gonna cut through the kale. And just into nice kind of bite-sized pieces. This is called dino kale or black kale. And if you see, it's kind of like dinosaur skin. I like looking for this. It's really hearty stuff. And it cooks great. It's even really good raw. Like instead of like romaine in a Caesar salad, just some nice black dino kale. Love it. All right, so check out the white beans, Howard. Kale in, white beans going. You don't really need to add a ton of flavor to these because the chorizo has garlic. It has spice. It's got the warmness from the actual smoked paprika. So it's kind of already doing its thing. And we're happy about that. Cool. So the pork is just kind of searing. The key to this, the absolute key, is not to play with it too much. Whenever you want to get a good sear on a steak, on a piece of chicken, on some scallops, whatever, you'll notice I'm just not poking it. I'm not prodding it. I'm not moving it. You want to really be confident in just letting it sear really hard on that first side, and that's what gives you that crust that you get at like restaurants and things like that. And Howard, can you get in really close? So everyone always asks me like, well, how do you know when to flip it? Well, if you can see there's a white kind of loading bar, I like to call it, and it's kind of moving up the side of the meat. When that gets to about halfway up the side of the meat, which you can see is going to be in about a minute or so, that's when I like to flip it. That's kind of my sign that, okay, we're almost there. So to me, that's like a loading bar in a computer. When it kind of loads to halfway, it's time for a flip. All right, let's give these a little bit of salt, these beans. It's really good. Now there's a lot of fat in there, which is awesome and was kind of the idea, but get over here. But I need a little bit of vinegar to cut through it. So this is sherry vinegar, staying with the Spanish theme. So I'm literally just going with a glug of that, just to kind of give it a little bit of tartness, some sweetness. All right, let's try it out. Ooh, I can already tell. This is so my jam. Like a fried egg over this, come on. Sometimes you just cook something at home and you're like, damn, that is that. Holy cow. And that took like no time. What a beautiful side dish. Celebration of pork fat, I love it. All right, my loading bar is halfway there. Howard, flippy poo, ready?
Got it.
Oh, and you see the rosemary just kind of lodged in there? Amazing. That looks really good. So you've seen me do this technique before, and you're gonna see me do it again, and I love it. You're not gonna eat all this butter, but this really sets the whole thing off. So I'm gonna take a little bit of butter, and by a little bit I mean, I don't know, 4 tablespoons of butter, and I'm just gonna melt it. Cool. And all the rosemary on the bottom of the pan, on the pork, the whole thing is gonna kind of mix with it. You can even throw a little garlic in there if you want. Just grab a couple of cloves, right in, just whole. And then watch, I'm gonna tip the butter, pick it up, and spoon it over the pork. This keeps it really moist, glossy, crusted, and it's just so good. I love this, especially on like a Friday night. This is really impressive. Like, again, you could cook any meat like this. It can be chicken, it could be fish, but you bust this technique out and your friends or your loved ones are just gonna lose their minds, legitimately. They're just gonna be so, so grateful. Love it. All right, so the beans, I just want you to know when they're done. The kale should be totally tender. So that means if I try one, it should be not too crunchy where the stem is. Perfect. So I'm gonna take out the rosemary. It did its job. Might as well just throw that in the butter with the pork. And let's grab a plate. This is how fast this thing comes together. All right. So, white beans down with the beautiful smoky chorizo, kind of crunchy kale, the dino kale. I love this so much. That smells so good. And again, no olive oil in this. It's just the natural oil from the actual chorizo itself. Let's take a look at the other side. And needs another minute. And I'm just gonna kind of keep basting. This is what it's all about. You'll see a lot of chefs doing this technique. It really makes a huge difference. Oh, can you smell the rosemary, Howard?
I can, it smells great.
Now, do you know, if you don't know the difference between woodsy herbs, which is really good for this technique, and kind of soft herbs, woodsy herbs are ones you can't really eat raw. So think thyme, rosemary, what's another good woodsy herb? Give it to me, guys. I'm sure you're out there. Sage. Those are all good woodsy herbs. Non-woodsy herbs are the soft ones. Mint, basil, cilantro, parsley. So this would work better with a woodsy herb. Look at this. I wish you guys could smell it. I so wish you guys could smell this. And again, it's not about the butter, it's about the pork. The butter is doing its job by just basting. All right, we are at a good spot. 2 minutes and 45 seconds left on the clock, which means we're coming on the home stretch. Get as much of that butter as you can off. Oh, right on top of those. You could just do a little bit of the brown butter on the outside if you wanted to. You don't need to. But that, my friends, is all you really need to learn if you want to blow someone away. Beautiful, crispy rosemary pork chop sitting over the smokiest, creamy white beans with kale. You will love this dish. And for more like it, head to readyforseconds.com and Yumly.